more about Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, 3 of the 4 of us chose the same one. So, yeah. So I'm going to start off. It is the Jesus and the woman caught in adultery. So
Already some stuff going down over there in that area.
Going down. So this is the record is in John chapter 8, and I'll bring it up in verse 2. And early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came unto him, and he sat down and taught them. And the scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they said unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act.
Yikes.
Now, Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what sayest thou? This they said, tempting him that they might have to accuse him. So I'll just stop there. So the religious leaders, there's so much to unpack in this one record that I don't even know if we'll get to another record. But the religious leaders brought this woman. They didn't care about this woman, and they didn't care about her sin. They cared about cornering Jesus. They thought, man, if we can get this man caught in a trap, that we've got him, and we're gonna say he's a fraud, and everybody's gonna believe him, because they were just so jealous of him, and they were just evil. And Jesus Christ fulfilled all the law, right? That's what the Word of God says. Jesus Christ fulfilled all the law. So it's his duty, if you will, to uphold the law. So what do you do in this situation where the woman it says she was taken in the very act. So there was no, maybe she was falsely accused, whatever, but she did it. She did it. She's guilty. And the law does say that such should be stoned. So, Master, what do we do?
How derogatory the fact that here are the Pharisees calling someone, like you're saying, they're trying nothing but to trap him, and they call him Master.
Right. Oh yeah, definitely. It's just
yeah.
They didn't mean it.
No,
it was so phony and so hypocritical. Yeah.
And Christ's reaction to it is phenomenal. So I don't give no spoiler alerts, but yeah.
This they said, tempting him that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down and with his finger wrote on the ground as though he heard them not. So he wrote on the ground, and it's kind of an odd reaction. Like when you read it, it's just, why would he do that? But to my understanding, it's just to take a moment to consider. Like, he's been put on the spot. It's okay to not have the answer or the rebuttal right there.
Or to react emotionally.
Take a moment. So what did he do? He wrote on the ground. It doesn't say what he wrote. But we know that he took a moment. How can and I'm sure he was thinking, how can I save this woman and still keep the law? That's what I imagine him thinking.
Do you think part of this was, like, initially he didn't want to play into it because it says as though he heard them not? And I know that's in italics.
I have a take on it.
Go ahead.
In situations to where people, I've been in situations where people are confronting you, trying to get you off your game or whatever it is, right?
Right.
They're playing the mental game. The best thing you can do in those situations is to stop and take a beat and let them think about that you're now thinking. because it puts them now, they're like on their heels. They're going, wait a minute, we expected a large reaction from him. We've called it, we've brought up this, we're calling him master, and he knows that we don't think he's master. We're now bringing something that could easily, if he doesn't do this right, could really cause some situations. And Jesus's response to it is, oh, okay, I see what you're doing. Let me take a second and let you think about what I'm about to say.
I'd like to just throw out here that's kind of related adjacently to the topic. It's the religious leaders who are setting up the situation so that they might have a reason to accuse him. Throughout the Gospels and even in the book of Acts, Jesus and John the Baptist, and then in the book of Acts, other believers, it's always the religious leaders that are after them, the religious people. So it's like, if you have a hesitancy to believe, or there are a lot of people that abjectly don't believe, or have like moved to atheism or agnosticism because of religious people. The Lord Jesus Christ had issues with religious people too. That's not a reason to reject Jesus Christ.
Right.
That is not a reason to reject Jesus Christ. The religious leaders were the ones who condemned him to death, who said, crucify him, crucify him.
Yeah, you could almost say Jesus totally understands your viewpoint and agrees with you.
Right.
Yeah.
And in fact, there are times in there where he speaks and says to or not him specifically, it was more, I think, Paul, that talks about not being religious.
Yeah.
Being of Christ. Following in the footsteps of Christ. And really pushing off the ideals of religion, man-made rules and things. And
just not being caught up in that, and to just know that, I mean, I know that people sometimes they come from churches, or they come from different like religious backgrounds where there has been abuse, there has been like an oppression, there are things, and I would just say that was the people, that wasn't God. Because even the Son of God was crucified by religious people, like, so that doesn't mean that you can't find a group that is loving and good and on the word, so adjacent topic, but I thought it worth throwing out there
for sure.
So, all right, shall I go on?
Keep going.
Yes, verse 7.
Okay. So when they continued asking him, so, maybe a couple minutes passed, I don't know, but they're like, hey, he lifted up himself and said unto them, he that is without sin among you, let him cast a stone at her. So beautiful how he puts it back on them. He's the only man in the area who could actually do what he said, because he's the only one without sin.
Right.
But he immediately put it back on them and was still able to essentially keep the law, because he said, okay, that's that, essentially that is what the law says.
Yep.
So he that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. And again, he stooped down and wrote on the ground. So
do you ever wonder what he was writing?
No.
What was he writing?
I don't think he was specifically writing stuff. I think it was just kind of
says he wrote
doodling.
I don't know.
I always imagine it kind of like a doodling thing too. But I mean, it does say writing, so he could have been writing some scripture. It is written.
Would you imagine if he was if what it said was, and he just twirled his fingers in the sand? It's not as much of an impact as he just wrote, because it really gets the visual of him finger in the dirt, and he's not paying attention to anything else but what he's doing in the sand.
Right.
Yeah.
Really giving you his focus is solely on not allowing this situation
to stir him up.
In any way.
Yeah. So I really do love that. Yeah, it just that take a beat. And yeah, I do wonder, but it's like one of those things where like you can wonder about it, but you'll never know. So I try not to dwell on it.
I think he wrote God rules.
Yeah.
God rules. Yeah, probably.
With a Z on the end.
With a Z. Some total sweet Jesus graffiti on the
All right, go ahead. Verse 9.
And they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience.
Oh.
Yep. Went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, even unto the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. Wow. So yeah. So I mean,
like the silence of footsteps clearing the area itself, just knowing that everyone's like, okay, got us.
Like, dang
right?
It. He's
like,
right.
Well, I don't qualify, so I'm just gonna dip.
Yeah.
And like the sigh of relief from this woman, she was about to be murdered.
Yeah.
By stoning.
But I don't think she's thinking that just yet, because she's still brought in front of him, and because she even says, hey.
Well, we're gonna read
that's
that.
what I'm saying. So yeah, I don't know if she's there yet mentally.
When Jesus had lifted up himself and saw none but the woman, so he cleared out the area. And remember, he was in the temple, so I mean, there would have been many people around,
right?
And they cleared out. When Jesus had lifted up himself and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are those thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? She said, No man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. And that's just the most, I don't know, beautiful thing to me. I love this section of scripture so much, this record, because he doesn't condemn her, but he doesn't approve of her behavior either. We live in a culture where we have gone to wanting, groups wanting sin approved of and even celebrated.
Right.
He doesn't approve of it. He doesn't condemn her either. He says, go and sin no more. So, don't do that again. But and he was the only one. He was the only one without sin among them that could have cast that stone. And he has, as the Son of God, he has the nature of God. The nature of God is love. And just to forgive this woman and to just go and sin no more. I love that. I love that so much. I imagine sometimes like being able to be in Jesus's shoes and be that person. Sometimes I imagine myself as the woman because I am not perfect. And thankful to our God that he loved us enough to send his own son to die for us, that we can be forgiven for all time, So,
well, and I think the key thing here is to recognize what he said to her. He's forgiving her. I'm not condemning thee, go, but sin no more. There's criteria that had to be met for her salvation, whereas for us, we don't have that. But why wouldn't we hold ourselves to that standard of sin no more?
Yeah.
When God has freely given us everything he's given us, and we have that perfect sanctification, that perfect washing, that perfect forgiveness and remission of sin, why would we want to continue in sin?
Right.
So for us, it's more of our reasonable service to live life above that. But it was wonderful to see how he said, go and sin no more. The record never goes on to tell us, number one, who this woman is. There's
Right.
speculation about who she is, but
Right.
it doesn't say who she is. It doesn't say where she ended up. It doesn't say if she ever did this again. That's on her.
Yep.
And we can only believe that the impact made in this situation and how her life was saved because of the kindness and love of this man to step in and treat the situation the way he did, that she would learn from that. And again, her reasonable service would have been to sin no more as well in the eyes of God.
Where is it in the word? And I believe, I'm certain it's in Romans, where it says, it's essentially saying just because we're of grace, is that an occasion to sin? And
Right.
it's like, no,
Right.
like God forbid.
Right.
Do y'all know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Yes.
It's Paul talking.
Yes, it's the
And
Apostle Paul.
Yes.
And God forbid. Oh, no. Let's see. Do we then make void the law through faith? God forbid we establish the law.
I think it might be in that.
It's Romans 6:15. Go there real quick. Let's see. Romans chapter 6, verse 14. For sin shall not have dominion over you, for you are not under the law, but under grace. What then? Shall we sin because we are not
Right.
under the law, but under grace? God forbid.
God forbid.
Yeah. The idea of just because we're cleansed and saved, our lifestyle should not be that of, well, hey, I got free reign and I know I'll be forgiven for things. Our mental capacity should not be in the thoughts
Right.
of, well, I got it made, so therefore I'm good to go type of thing. The beauty of this verse, as you alluded to, Laura, I think it's such a great, anyone who could be on the fence, questioning whether, what God's word means and what it's trying to do for people versus everything else that's out there where people are questioning, religion and all those kinds of things. This is a great example of where Jesus is basically saying those things. The most important part of this, what a witness that to anyone who's you're talking to some listeners, possibly, right? You've had a past, and maybe in your teen years or something to that effect, you've done things that you regret and were wrong or whatever, and your thoughts are, everyone else in your life has told you how they're just unforgivable things, or even your own mental capacities have said it's unforgivable, you're never going to be worthy of forgiveness of these things that you did. And what the example that's happening in this chapter is, Jesus Christ is telling you that the way God views these things is, if in your heart you plan to do no more of that stuff in your life, it can be forgiven. It is possible to find your salvation in God, and that's through our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ,
Right.
which is the opportunity this woman had. He's basically saying to you, the listener, hey, listen, you know what you did, and I know what you did, and everybody else who's around here who could judge you, do they have the right to judge you? They don't have the right to judge you. I have the right to judge you, and I'm not going to judge you. So therefore, be grateful in that. Do something with it, which means get a relationship with God and move on with your life.
It's that walk of thankfulness for sure.
Such a beautiful verse.
Yeah.
Or chapter. Yeah.
Section of verse.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
There's so much goodness in there.
Anything else we want to share about that particular?
But that's my favorite part, is just that the warmth and forgiveness aspect of it. Again, and again, for anybody who is in the midst of where people are trying to rattle you, again, Jesus is showing such a great example here
of restraint.
Just hold
I'm
on.
sure he just wanted to go off on them.
Take a beat. Even in relationships, in times with your friends, your wife, whatever, the spouses, when things get a little warm, take a second, slow down, and go, let me consider.
I remember doing a teaching once on practicing the pause and just being able to pause and consider.
Yeah.
Just whatever it is, whatever decision you make, because when you do that, it gives you time to reflect on what the word means. We just listened to a great teaching tonight about holding on to the word, holding fast to the word that we know. And when the word is living in our minds and is readily available to call upon in time of need, you're in a great position for that word to be there. There's other times when we may let it slip and we have to search a little harder to find it and get it back.
Right.
But practicing that pause gives us the moment to, filter through some of the other stuff in our head.
Well, and think of the impact it
get to the
makes.
word.
Those two incredible silences
Yeah.
makes the impact of the little thing that he said that meant that was like mic drop stuff, right? It wasn't like a 17 bar rant he went on, and
Right.
Two sentences.
It was a very simple thing to say.
Yeah.
And he said, I can imagine his tone was very, well, those among you, you know what I mean? But after those two magnificent silences, the impact afterward is so much greater. Anyways, I'll shut up and have some silence.
Brian, what are your thoughts? We haven't heard from you at all.
No, I mean, you guys covered a lot of it. I think that it's a lot to see, and like you said, we don't know if she changed her ways. I mean, Jesus said, "Go and sin no more." That doesn't mean that she didn't, but I think the reality is that just because in our day and time we're born again doesn't mean that we have salvation. Doesn't mean that we no longer mess up, and that we have to work at it. So
yeah, it's definitely a walk for sure.
Yeah,
moment by moment.
So, all right, do we want to explore a different record?
Yeah.
Sure.
All right, where do we want to go, guys?
I personally like the record. I have a few here of history, I should say.
History.
John 2:1-11, where Jesus Christ turned water into wine. A favorite of mine. I'm a wine drinker. But yeah, I love this record too. We'll read through it and then I'll share a little bit. So chapter 2, verse 1. And the third day there was a marriage in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there, and both Jesus was called and his disciples to the marriage. So they were all going as a fam. And when they wanted wine, the mother of Jesus said unto him, They have no wine. Jesus said unto her, Woman, what have I to do with thee? Mine hour is not yet come. His mother said unto the servants, Whatsoever he saith unto you, do it. And there were set there 6 water pots of stone, after the manner of the purifying of the Jews or Judeans, containing 2 or 3, I can't read this. Firkins apiece. Jesus said unto them, Fill the water pots with water, and they filled them up to the brim. And he said unto them, Draw out now, and bear unto the governor of the feast. And they bare it. When the ruler of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine, he knew not whence it was, but the servants which drew the water knew. The governor of the feast called the bridegroom, and said unto him, Every man at the beginning does set forth good wine, and when men have well drunk, then that which is worse, but that has kept the good wine until now. This beginning of miracles did Jesus in Cana of Galilee, and manifested forth his glory, and his disciples believed on him. And what I thought was really neat about this is his mother deferring to him and saying, need your help here, and he met the need for these people. He set an example for these people. The fact where the ruler of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine. And he said, usually the good wine is brought out first. And once people have a few drinks, they don't care what they're drinking.
Right.
And it's worse wine, but it was still of quality. And just what an amazing situation and great display of power here and the glory of God in this situation, just meeting the need for these people. It's funny because I do go on social media sometimes, and there's these memes going around now of like Jesus at a restaurant, and
it's hilarious.
The waiter's like, what are you guys going to have to drink? And one of the guys is like, we'll
just
have
fun.
12 waters,
Yeah, just
knowing
water.
that they're going to turn it into wine. It's just so silly. But this was one of the first recorded miracles of things that he did. And it
Yeah.
it wasn't a life-saving situation here, but it was still a display of God's power and
Yeah.
meeting the need for these people. So what are your takes on it?
There was definitely a little bit of saving. I mean, at these weddings and the fact that there was, the governor of the feast and all this kind of stuff, there was definitely some, what do you call it?
Save
Situations
the
that
party.
situation. Well, yeah, but situations to where they could have, whoever's family this could have been very much judged like, wow, you're really going against tradition and all the things that we do, and it could have been a very bad deal, right? I mean, it is water into wine, and it is the first miracle, but it's still the fact that here's where Jesus is taking a step, and I mean, he is kind of saving face for these people. I mean, the impact.
Mhm,
Who knows what the
mhm.
impact could have been had they gone, well, we don't have
We
any,
don't have it.
we
Yeah.
don't have
Yeah.
wine, and all we have is these pots of water. I don't know what the social impact could have been to those people and of the
Yeah,
time, based on traditions and things.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, not to overshadow the miracle of water into wine, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, and this is just
I
the
do.
first wedding. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is the first one. Yeah, I love that it was literally just like his mom, like
Right.
his mother said unto the servants, whatsoever he saith, do what my son says.
Right.
He saith unto you, do it. And I'm sure part of him, because he even says, woman, what have I to do with thee? My hour is not yet come. Like, what do you want me to do? And
Right.
she's just like, kind of like, whatever he tells you to do, you do it. So I mean, I almost imagine him being like, all right, let's do this. But it's just so cool. Again, the power of God. The power of
Right.
God is amazing. And this particular miracle is not the same as, but seems to kind of hearken to similar miracles, like in the Old Testament, where the woman had the pot of oil, and she was almost out of oil. They were starving.
Right.
Do you remember this?
Yes.
And
Her and her son.
her and her son, and the man of God said, get all the vessels you can, borrow all the vessels from everybody, and then it's like pour the oil into the vessels, and then she ends up filling up all the vessels with
Right.
oil. And then and that's the same miracle that Jesus Christ did when he fed the 5,000 with the fish and the loaves, just on a much larger scale.
Right.
So similar, not same, but kind of harkens to that God has power over the physical realm.
Yeah.
He owns the earth. What does it say? He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. He is he still owns the earth itself, even after the fall, where Adam transferred his dominion over the world to the adversary. The dominion of the systems of the world, of the running of the world, passed to the adversary, but God kept ownership of the world. So I think that is a display of that.
Psalm 24:1 says, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof.
Thank you. Thanks for the backup.
I was trying to think of it as you were saying it.
Yeah.
What I think is cool here too to note is that his mother, Mary, knew he was the Son of God. I don't for a second think she was like, do one of your miracles, Jesus. Like, I don't think it was just this, like a show off situation.
No,
I think she was looking to him in a time of need for these people.
Yes, I agree.
He came through. So, I mean, some people might read that and be like, oh, he was, performing miracles at will now. That's not how it was.
It also was a pouring out of that too. He was it wasn't like he just turned one single little glass
Goblet.
into wine.
Yeah.
He made it so everyone could drink with no issues and have plenty of it.
And it was the best.
It was the
Right.
good wine.
Yeah, and
Right.
it was the quality. So there's some taking of the fruits that God pours out to us as well. Here's an example that when he pours out, it is of the best quality,
Right.
and there is lots of it.
Yeah.
True. Yep.
The bountifulness. Brian, were you going to say something?
No, I mean, I just think that it's a neat record. It's a good way to start his
To kick things off.
Ministry.
Yeah.
In that it's not raising Lazarus from the dead. It's not healing someone who's born lame or blind. It's not so earth-shattering that people start freaking out. It's something like, oh, it's something that's generally unheard of, but it's not so like jarring that it's going to make people freak out necessarily.
Well, and it says here,
people were merry already because it's already at a wedding, at a party and stuff, and so this is something that could be a talking point and get people asking questions. And it says that after he had performed this, and he what does it say? It says this is the beginning of the miracles that he did in Cana and manifested forth his glory, and his disciples believed on him.
Right.
So if it helped their believing, it's like incremental. Because again, if you're pulling from the notes that we had from a recent teaching, you can look at them as they're stacked. These 8 miracles in the book of John, they get progressively more advanced, if you will. It's like more vast or more powerful, to the point of raising Lazarus from the dead.
Yeah.
And these are all things that they may not have remembered the water being turned to wine when Jesus got up, but they would have remembered Lazarus as close to his own resurrection as Lazarus's was.
Yeah.
And to have a literal witness and eyewitnesses to that kind of miracle, they could be like, oh wow, this is the power of God. The wine is something that it kicked it off, but it was something that, again, if he had turned water to wine and then he got up from the dead, there might have been some, maybe not enough structure to base one's believing on, if you will. But these miracles, God set these up in a pattern for a reason, and to get them to, and that pattern too is that it seems silly, but the last thing of the 8 ones that are recorded in the teaching that we saw, the last one,
the eight recorded miracles in the book of John, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The first one was he turned water to wine, and the last one was that he filled nets with fish.
Oh, can we look at that one? That one is so good.
Food
Where's
and drink.
that one on?
John 21.
Yeah.
And so food and drink, people's sustenance are being met.
Yeah.
But in the middle, that's where, like, again, I don't know how you measure miracles, but the big miracles happened in the middle. He fed 5,000. He walked on water.
Yeah.
He healed both a lame man and a blind man and raised Lazarus from the dead. But the beginning and the end were food and drink. Taking care of the people's necessities, if you will. I know wine's not a necessity, but in that moment, it was.
It was. Well, and what's cool is that it says that his disciples knew about it, and I'm sure his mother knew about it.
Right.
But nobody else at the party. It wasn't this big thing. Oh, you'll never guess what Jesus did.
Yeah,
right.
It's not a parlor trick.
It was for those people who needed to know what God was capable of working in him to do.
Yeah, he didn't pull that. And the fact of the matter is, too, if you look at that record, he didn't tell them, put it in a modern setting.
Right.
When people aren't pouring wine, when they're pouring glasses of wine for a party, they're not pouring those glasses in the middle of a room. They're in the back, and and they're walking through
delivered.
Out of the back, out of the kitchen or something. So most likely this was not done in the middle of the wedding to take away from the bride and the bridegroom themselves. Right. It was, he's like, okay, get water. You servers, come back here. and then we'll do this, and then just start scooping the water out with the goblets and head out and feed and take care of the people. So it wasn't like it wasn't a public thing in that he would have showcased himself. This was not a look what I can do. It's not a parlor trick. He took care of a need.
He was a guest and became a servant in a blink of an eye. Think about that.
Yes, true.
Yeah, and willing to serve, if you will. I mean, his mom said so. His mother said, "Hey, can you take care of them, help them out?" And he said, "Yeah, okay." And then do this.
Who wants to read 21?
Let's see. I will.
Okay.
Let me wait. Where's it
starts
start?
in verse 1.
Starts in verse 1.
Yeah.
21:1.
Yeah, 1 through 14.
I'm just skimming it over. Okay. We'll start in verse 3.
Okay.
Simon Peter saith unto them, I go a fishing. They say unto him, we also go with thee. They went forth and entered into a ship immediately, and that night they caught nothing.
Oh boy.
But when the morning was now come, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples knew not that it was Jesus. Then Jesus saith unto them, Children, have ye any meat? They answered him, No. And he said unto them, Cast the net on the right side of the ship, and ye shall find. They cast therefore, and now they were not able to draw it for the multitude of fishes.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore that disciple whom Jesus loved saith unto Peter, It is the Lord. So that's how they knew, because it's like this guy told them to do something, and they went ahead and did it. And now look at all this massive abundance. Now when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he girt his father's coat unto him, for he was naked, and did cast him himself into the sea. And the other disciples came in a little ship, for they were not far from land, but as it were 200 cubits, dragging the net with fishes. As soon as they were come to land, they saw a fire of coals there, and fish laid thereon, and bread. So, knowing, having that miracle that they had been out there all night and caught nothing. And then Jesus just says, cast it on the right side.
Mm-hmm. See what happens.
And now this multitude of fishes. There's another record of it's very similar. It's not the same record.
Luke 5.
But it's a similar record. Yeah, Luke 5. I love this one. Let's go. Let's jump over there real quick.
This is my favorite one.
Yeah.
Because there's some specific
some more little
details in this. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're gone a fishing again. And let's see. When he had left speaking, he said unto Simon, launch out into the deep and let down your nets for a draught. So there's two net, or more than one net, he says. Mm-hmm. And this was another one where I believe they were like not catching anything. And he's just like, do this, let down your nets. And Simon answered and said unto him, yeah, here it is. Master, we have toiled all the night and have taken nothing. Nevertheless, at thy word, I will let down the net. So instead of listening to nets, he let down the net. And when they had done this, they enclosed a great multitude of fishes, and their net brake. And they beckoned unto their partners, which were in the other ship, that they should come and help them. And they came and filled both the ships, so that they began to sink. So talk about like, I think it's in Micah where it's like, or Malachi, I will pour you out of blessing. There is not room enough to receive it.
Right.
There's a lot. There's a lot. And when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, depart from me, for I'm a sinful man, O Lord. And yeah, so this is kind of at the beginning, the outset of Jesus Christ's ministry, because he says down in verse 10, fear not, from henceforth thou shalt catch men. So he says, I'll teach you to be, and then the one in John is
a different
after he got up.
Right.
Yeah,
was
after
already
he got
risen.
up from
Yeah.
when he was resurrected in his resurrected body.
Because in verse
So they
14
are
it says, "This is now the third time
Mhm.
that Jesus showed himself to his disciples after that he was risen from the dead." So
Well, and
Yeah.
also an interesting
Similar
thing
record.
is that he had already spoken to Simon Peter previous to this account, and when he had first met the two brothers
Right.
and told them that
Mhm.
they would become fisher of men,
Right.
and then so they dropped all their possessions and started to walk with Christ or Jesus. I keep saying
Mhm.
Christ. That's what he ends up being, and starts to follow him, but then goes back to his normal everyday routine of things, just like we do at times. Just
yeah.
walk with Jesus, seeing miracles and wonders, and decides, hey, this is really cool, but I got to get back to that fishing game I'm accustomed to, and goes back to fishing,
Right.
which is where this is what happens. This is Simon Peter.
Mhm.
Again.
Mhm.
But don't you
Yep.
feel like he learned a lesson from the first time when he was told to
Oh
put
yeah,
the net-
definitely.
Sure,
Oh,
because
yeah.
the very next time he does,
Yeah.
Yeah, he does exactly what Jesus said. He's like,
yeah.
cast the
I
net
learned
on
my
the right
lesson
side of the
this
ship.
time.
They
I'm
did
gonna
it.
go- yeah.
They listened. So
Such a good-
it's awesome. God is so good, and these miracles of Jesus, they're just to show that he walked with God, and the power of God was with him,
Mhm.
and
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 we
al-
have that
and
same power.
and also the
Yeah,
will
we
of
do.
God, which is here's these guys that didn't listen to the exact thing he
Mm.
said to do, right? Yet he still poured out abundance. Even
Yeah.
that's God, that's the will of God. His intention for us is that he wants to take care of us.
Right.
It is us that puts the kink in the water hose, or the grace hose,
Mhm.
that keeps the major outpouring that we really could get. But even what we do get is still pretty darn amazing.
Yeah.
And that's the part where we got to look at and drop to our knees and go, thank you for the multitude of these fish, when it could have been multitude, whatever is more than multitude.
Yeah, we just experienced in our area, and this is something we'll be able to
Ooh, I'd like to talk
look
about
back
this. I have a thing that happened. It's such a cool thing.
Hurricane Helene hit our area, and I know went up the coast. In fact, in fellowship tonight, Laura, you prayed for
Mhm.
believers more north of us. But I am an insurance agent for people who may not know, and in the last 3-4 days over the weekend, whatever, there have been over 1,500 calls to our office alone for claims.
Right.
That's just people calling us. That's not counting people calling the company directly. Our office has been fielding claims. There are people without homes. There are people without vehicles.
Mhm.
We've seen a lot of vehicle claims, vehicles submerged, unable to be driven.
Mhm.
There are shelters being set up for these people. There are comfort houses, is what they're calling them, where people can come in and take a shower, get a hot meal, whatever the case may be,
Mhm.
charge their
Cool down.
phones, whatever. It has been a horrific time for our area here in Florida. And I know people north of us have experienced just as devastating situations. God continues to pour out the blessings in this time of necessity for people. There are people rising
Mhm.
up to help others. And
Sure.
it is so fantastic to see. If there is any blessing in this situation at all, it is seeing God work in these people to rise up and give and to be moved with love.
Mhm.
It's been really fantastic to see. My Facebook feed is flooded with resources for people, because
Mhm.
I do business over here. The majority of the business that my office handles is coastal properties, so we really have seen a
Yeah.
lot of it. But it's just wonderful to see God at work. And God bless my husband, who is an essential worker at his job in retail and
Right.
providing supplies and generators and things like that for people, and he's been able to
Yes.
help facilitate that as well. I know the two of you working for the company you work for, Publix, they have been fantastic in helping people as well. They have some
Mhm.
efforts going too right now for food sources and stuff like that. So it's really neat to see God come together. I feel like we had this camaraderie with 9/11 as a country. I think
Mhm.
we came together as a country for a little bit. It was short lived, but it was there for a little bit. And I
It was
feel like
nice while it lasted.
our area and just like the state of Florida right now. And then I'm sure these other states are experiencing the same thing, but I'm really seeing God at work. We saw the adversary at work. We saw what his hand did, but we're going to see how God works in these people to build these relationships and rebuild. So I just wanted to share that because this is a podcast we're going to come and listen to at some point in the future. And we're going to remember, this story.
Right.
Well, I love to give an example of where God did work in the situations of this storm. I know I'm very grateful for our own situation where we live. And also for my workplace, the area in which my store sits, it was like only one little block that still had power, and that was my store. And it was the store that was going to provide generators and different things for people that needed stuff. And to drive up a completely pitch black road and thinking to myself, I'm believing that we're going to be okay. My day is going to go profitable, and we're going to do, we're going to be able to help people and all that stuff. To show up at my building with the power on, because had I not had power, it would have been a nightmare to try to help people.
You wouldn't have been able to.
No, it would have been like,
money,
hey, unless you
registers.
got cash, I can't help you, kind of thing, and it would have been horrible. But it wasn't, and it was amazing. And it was me and one other guy working for the first 4 hours, 5 hours.
2 people.
And we took care of we took care of people, and people were patient. Anyways, but that's not the greater miracle I want to talk about. I have a friend who lives in a low-lying area where realistically it floods when it rains normal.
Yeah.
Right.
And he has this fence that he's been kind of holding together by 2 little 2x4s, right? On one side and the other, and it's this giant fence, and he's been just battling this whole thing.
Putting Band-Aid on it,
putting Band-Aids on it, because he's like, he works real hard, and he barely has time to take care of his own stuff. He's out working on other people's places. Anyways, long story short, I call him and I'm asking him how he's doing. He goes, John, you're not going to believe it, man. And he sends me pictures of the fence. He goes, I put a tote on top just as a joke, like I'm sure this is going to get tossed across the street type of thing. He woke up in the morning to no flooding, power, and the fence still stayed where it was.
Oh, geez.
And he's like, I don't know that's possible. And I said, brother, I know how it's possible. And that's who you need to be thinking right now. Right now, what happened is God just gave you an example of, look, kid, this is how it's supposed to be for you.
Yeah.
And this is somebody I've been trying to witness to and talk to about the power of God and what having God in his life can do, and recognize these things, because this guy is just an amazing person, lives a biblical life, very giving person. But I'm hoping to bring him closer to God. And again, he was like, yeah, that's the first thing I did is I looked up and said, God, thank you. And I'm like, see, man, because it's not supposed to be for you.
Something so simple.
So it was really cool. So
that's awesome.
I know that's not the story for everyone, and I understand that. And that, but again, they're in those stories of, like you said, the tragedies. God's working and trying to make things go smoothly for people, and people working together. And when a person just shows up at your house and is like, "Hey, Cal, can I help you?" That's someone where God sent that person.
That's right.
So, anyways, I'll shut up.
What have you guys seen at Publix?
Honestly, like at my store, so we're pretty inland,
right?
Real thankful. Anytime a big storm comes through, I just turn to my husband. I'm like, I am so thankful for where we live, because even when Irma came through, so that was probably the worst hurricane that we have experienced, because it was dead on to our location. The eye passed over our house. We remember it passing over about 1 o'clock in the morning. What was that? 2017, something like that.
Yeah.
And so that, if y'all remember, that was a Cat 5.
Yeah.
But we're so inland that by the time it gets to us, I'm not saying it's nothing, but I'm not afraid.
Yeah.
We take our little precautions. And like for that one in particular, we got extra like dry goods, like, foods, extra water. we were prepared
Hmm.
for power outages and whatnot.
I think we even
Um,
housed people from the coast.
We did
believers from the
house
coast.
some believers who lived on the coast, and but for this particular, so this was Hurricane Helene. No, we didn't get hardly anything. Like
Couple
we got
twigs,
some
that
wind
happened.
and rain, and I'm honestly like in Florida, you get wind and rain anyway.
8 days a week.
So we were very thankful that like our home, we're actually a little bit elevated than our neighbors too. Just a little bit above
Yep.
everybody around us. So yeah, I'm just so thankful because in Irma, I remember the street flooded, and it was flooded down the street, but our home was fine. Yeah, this one, nothing at all for us. And at Publix, it was just super busy. People buying water, just people in the store, just buying. I work in the bakery department, and they just like cookies. Gotta have those snacks if we're
What better to
Comfort
do?
if we're
food, right? Yeah.
comfort food. And yeah, I mean, I get it for real.
For sure.
So, but very thankful that we didn't have any issues where my store never closed. We were, I
Good.
know that a lot of other stores closed, and we never had a closing or adjusted hours. We always had power here at the store. So, we were very blessed. Now, my brother who lives in Tennessee, different story. So that was part of the reason why I prayed for Appalachia during our fellowship meeting tonight, because they had, I think, probably some of the worst of it. I know that people on the coast had it rough, but as the hurricane moved up Georgia, through Georgia, and then Tennessee, Kentucky, North Carolina, those areas, I mean, they had like bridges collapse. My brother was telling me how like there's like road, it's not there anymore. It got literally washed away. They were without power and water for I think about 4 days.
4 days.
And one of the things he told me, he was like, Lori, it wasn't just the hurricane. It had been raining there for a while before that, several days before that. And the water or the ground was just so saturated, it could not absorb anymore. And he said like that, the type of soil that they have, it's like a red clay and granite. It doesn't absorb anyway. Like it takes a while to absorb. So it's just not. It was the perfect storm, if you will. And so I know a lot of people. I mean, there have been literal towns wiped off the map, and my heart goes out to those people. I've heard stories of people losing their family members, and I am thankful that it passed over me, and I pray for those who it did not pass over. And even my brother who did have inconveniences in what he was experiencing, he said, he's Lori, he calls me Lori, I didn't even complain because I knew that there were other people out there that they don't have a home anymore. That kind of devastation, they've lost people. And I didn't even complain. And I don't know, there's a season for everything, as it says in the book of Ecclesiastes, but that's definitely a season to grieve with people and to come together to help as well whenever you have the opportunity to help someone do it.
Yeah, that's all we can do. But that's exactly what Jesus Christ did. We read it in that first record. There was a need, and he stepped in and became a servant for people. He humbled himself, and that's what we do in situations. God has blessed us with so much, and we're in a position to give. whatever that may be,
Mhm.
whether it's financial, whether it's time, whether it's a kind word or support,
Mhm.
emotionally. And I know I've been doing a lot of that with my clients that call in for claims and just trying to
I'm
help them
sure.
figure out things. And yeah, so,
I've,
but
I've been doing a lot of stooping down on the ground and writing in the dirt.
have you?
Because it's, you know, where you know that just people are, it's not their fault. They're coming in and they just, a lot of the things that they've lost so much stuff and they're just like,
There's anger.
they just want to take it out on somebody. And I
Yeah.
just happen to be the guy loading up a thing for them. And,
You got big shoulders.
but you know, after a little bit of time, it starts to wear on you. So, but
Yeah. no
all I
doubt.
kept reminding myself is at least you're here and you're going to go home to your house and you're going to have a good meal and you're going to have a place to lay your head. And, you know,
Yep.
you can handle it for a few more. And you're, you know, you're just doing the best you can to try to,
You know what?
be kind to people. And then there's those people that are just super, you know, they've been through the crap and they're still being kind and awesome. So
Think
Yeah.
about Jesus Christ on the cross
yeah,
and actually when he was just standing trial and the multitude saying, crucify him, crucify him, crucify him full well knowing he did nothing wrong.
right.
Right.
Mhm.
Had this entire area of civilization against him, and he still
Mhm.
gave his life on the cross.
Right.
Still,
Yeah.
Mhm.
for those people who said crucify him, you know.
Mhm.
Sobering moment.
Yeah.
I don't want to end this on a bad note. Let's
that's
go
not
back to
bad.
the wine.
That's not bad. That
Go
you
back
brought
to the wine.
reality.
Let's go back to the wine, guys.
Oh my goodness. No, this was
So-
a good. There's so many more stories we could share because there are a ton throughout all the books. We hit on some that were from John, but gosh, so much to read, so much to learn about Jesus Christ, how he handled himself, how he
He's our greatest
constantly
example.
did the God's will, the Father's will, how he continued to teach and preach and be an example. There's just so much here.
Mhm.
So,
Awesome.
yep. Good stuff. Good stuff.
All right. Well, on that note,
Closing.
he's
I'm Brian.
I'm Laura.
I'm Beth.
I'm John.
And this has been the
All
Word
right.
with Friends podcast, guys. So thanks
All
for
right.
tuning in. And
Love
we will
ya.
talk to you soon. Love you.
Bye.